Hey everyone, Samantha McLean from Elite Agent Magazine, and we're bringing you a bonus lesson this week. We've heard a lot of advice from the coaches on how as agents you should do things, but is there any actual science to back it up? As a matter of fact, it turns out that there is. CoreLogic have done a study on how vendors perceive real estate agents and what in their eyes makes the transaction good or bad. Some of the results may surprise you. Here's Kylie Davis from CoreLogic to explain more.
So last year we did some research called the perceptions of real estate agents, because what we wanted to find out was whether this number was correct. And so every year Roy Morgan put out this research that showed how people perceive different professions. And every year, and they've been doing this for about 32 years, and every year real estate agents come, bumping around the bottom, and then the bottom 5. And every year you get 9% say that, yes, they're a very trustworthy profession. What the research is, though, is that we weren't quite convinced that it just randomly calls a pile of people and asks them what they think about a pile of different professions. What we wanted to understand, and I can't talk because I'm an ex-journalist, so, journalists are down the bottom as well. We're like, we jostle with you for 3rd or 4th position, and advertising salespeople are down there as well. But what we wanted to understand is, who are the people who actually pay for a real estate agent? Which are the vendors? What do they think about real estate agents, and what kind of experience are they having, and what can we learn from that to understand how to be better agents? So this is what we did. We surveyed 300 different respondents across 6 weeks. We collected them mainly through social media. We had about 266 answers per question, and 54% of our people who we surveyed had sold within the last 2 years. So the data is really quite up to date. So we asked people, they were a pretty typical bunch of vendors, and this is some of the research that we did and the way we cut the numbers to check what the skew was. But these guys, most of them sold their home within 90 days. Most of them actually sold within less than 90 days. Their main reasons for selling their home was that they were upgrading, they were making the most of strong prices, they were moving for work, they were downsizing, and a little bit of a fault in the survey, other included investing or moving for personal reasons like divorce or whatever. And they broke down really in a standard way as well. 77% were private treaty, 20% were auction, and 3% were weird other methods of sale. The other thing that we looked at was, what kind of a result did they have? And these numbers are really important because we also broke them down by when they sold, because we wanted to test the assumption that if you sold a couple of years ago when the market wasn't so hot, did you have a worse experience than people who had an experience during a really hot market? And how much of a skew did that put on the data? What we found out that didn't matter when people really sold, they probably had the same kind of experience. You can see 6 months to a year ago, based on when this data was, that was when the market was leaping ahead and no one had really realised that at that point. And so 50% surveyed respondents sold for the price that they expected. 24% sold above what they expected. They got a better result than they thought they were going to, and a better price than they thought they were going to. And that number of 50 plus 24, being 74, is really important, because if price was the only thing vendors care about, then the highest number of people that we could expect to have rated their agents as excellent would be 24%. And the highest number of people that we would expect would have a good result would be around 50, and that number should always come in around 74%. And so there's 2 pieces of really important information from this. Price is not the only thing that vendors care about, because what you'll see in the results that are coming up a little bit further is that the number of people that we surveyed who had an excellent experience was higher than 24. But the total number of people who had a good or excellent experience was less than 75. So basically, price isn't the only thing. It can't be the only thing that you get for your vendor. There are other behaviours and other things that you need to give to your vendor in order to make them have a great experience with you. Summary from all of this research that are really important personal behaviours that I know that Tom's going to back up for you too, as part of the coaching that you're getting. The first one is to stop the bullshit, basically, and we had miles and miles. I mean, I think out of the 300 people that we surveyed, probably 80% of them put comments into this spot, and that was the whole, being measured, managed down. Vendors smell a story a mile off. even if they don't know what the truth is, they know if they're being spun. And it's the fastest, and telling them a tale is the fastest way to guarantee that they'll be angry and disappointed. So being upfront with them and straight with them, no matter how difficult that conversation might be at the start, is always better than trying to, lie to them. You need to be honest, open and transparent, especially around price expectations. So what is the price that you've come up with? How did you come up with that? What's the data that you used to come up with that? Share all of it with them to help them understand the parameters of how you've calculated the price estimate, so that when those parameters change because markets change, you can flag to them that it's not you that's changed the price, it's the parameters of the market that have changed, and therefore your thinking's in this kind of way. Use data to back your position, and make sure you're referring people to sites where they can, when they do their homework, they're also seeing similar stuff to what you're telling them, so you're not contradicting the market. So the next one is being accountable and consistent. So agents, you need to do everything you say you're going to do. It's really customer service 101. Don't say you're going to do something and then forget about it or get too busy or have other clients sort of distract you. If you said that you would ring immediately after the open for inspection, ring immediately after the open for inspection, even if the news isn't exactly what the vendor's going to want to hear. Regular contact and follow up without being nagged is really important. And the thing too is that technology is enabling and creating the expectation of instant communication. So sort of claiming that you didn't get round to it, when you could have even tweeted them or messaged them in Facebook or whatever. Like, there's so many ways to communicate. Tom also tells a great story about, we'll just take a photo of all the shoes out the front and then send it to them and say, hey, this is how many people, look at the numbers that we've got through so far, or something like that. It's a really anxious time for vendors. They're always anxious. Even if they've done it regularly, it's always a period of high stress. Understanding that a sale process is high stress, and that even if you've done it before, you've probably done it a while ago, and so needing to be guided and coached through that process and see yourself as sort of like a life coach for selling to your vendors, most of them will really respond to that. And improve the end-to-end experience. We had some very humorous comments, albeit sad humorous, but about how people had been dumped the minute the contract was signed. And so if you think back to that idea that you're being auditioned the whole way through this sale process, this is a really important one too. So we can move from one stage to the other, and the relationship with the vendor's not over until the new buyer is in their home and they've basically unpacked the boxes. It's not when the relationship isn't over when the contract's signed. Everyone has to have got their keys. Everyone has to have felt that the 1 point whatever million that they just spent was the best buy they've ever had in their life, and that was a great experience, because you're dealing with some big numbers here, and big disappointment comes with bad customer service around big numbers. And they're judging your performance all the way through, and they're deciding whether they want to be in a long-term relationship with you. And you might think, well, why do I need a long-term relationship with a vendor if they only buy or sell a house maybe once every 7, 10, 15 years? I'll give you some data on that too. But 21%, so a fifth of the people that we surveyed said their agent gave them little or no help in understanding the sale process, and they wanted that. 37% of our vendors said that they would never use the agent that they just used again. That's a ridiculous number of people to drop out. It's way too high. And 17%, as we saw before, were upset. So another really interesting client. So we asked, do you expect to stay in touch with your agent or use him or her again? And the numbers for this are pretty interesting. 36% said yes, had a great experience, more than happy to stay in touch with them. 26% said yes, I would, but he never contacts me, so why would I? I've never heard from him since. I spent 1.5 million, he took away a commission, and then he gave me a bottle of champagne and fucked off into the sunset. That was it. Never heard from him again. And then 37%, no, I do not expect to stay in touch with him. I am not going to be using them again. And some of that might be because they were moving out of the area or whatever, but basically no. And the other part, the reason that's really important is because we asked, well, would you recommend your agent? Was your experience good enough for you to actually tell someone about it? And 68% said, yes, I would. That was a great experience, and I thought he or she was a good guy or gal, and I would recommend them. And if you remember back to that original, one of the earlier slides, personal recommendation, word of mouth, being told that someone was trustworthy is a really great way, is one of the most important ways. You can advertise 1,000,000 times in local papers or online, but word of mouth will always get you more referrals. 31% said no. Again, another third said, nah, not going to recommend him. And what came out of this is that the desire for vendors to have a long-term relationship. You know, no one wants to sell their home to someone they just speed dated.
So it turns out price is not the only thing that determines a good or a bad review. You can get your vendor a great price, but if you don't demonstrate the other good behaviours that Kylie talked about, you may still not get a good review from them. So quite a few interesting gems there from Kylie. If you'd like to download the Consumer Perceptions Report, the link is below, and don't forget to look out for the latest Buyer Perceptions Report, which will be out later this year. Remember, if you have any questions for our coaches or our Super Six, tweet us at EliteAgentMag, #transform. See you soon.